Good morning to those of you here in the sanctuary and to those of you who are watching at home on our YouTube channel. I'm Susan Owen Kinsey, and I welcome you to the Unitarian Universalist congregation of Flint. We are a progressive community in which people are free to be themselves without fear. And if you would like more information about Unitarianism or our congregation, please feel free to talk to one of our ministers, and their contact information can be found on our website at uuflint.org. And if you're a visitor today and you would like our weekly email, just fill out one of the information cards that we have here on the back, and we'll start sending them to you. You can unsubscribe if you decide to. Our announcements are on the back of your order of service if you'll take a moment to look at those. But there's a couple of them I'd like to really go over with you quickly. The first one, as you can see from the screens, is our crop walk. It's going to be downtown next Sunday. Today, even faster. October came faster than I thought it did. It starts at 1 o'clock, and the walk itself starts at 2. Contact Terry Cross. Terry, you want to raise your hand just in case anybody doesn't know who you are? There she is. For those of you, she's at the back. Also, you can donate to this very good cause that our congregation has supported for years by talking to Terry, even if you're not able to walk. All right, next slide. A very well-known activist musical duo, Emma's Revolution, will be here in the sanctuary on Sunday, October 29th at 7 p.m. This is a benefit concert for the LGBTQ community in Uganda, where it is now illegal to rent, employ, or offer human services to the LGBTQ plus community. People, please see your e-updates for more information, and you can talk to Ruth Straw during coffee hour to buy tickets online if you'd like. One last announcement that's not there. We have been talking as a congregation about some changes that are made to our denomination called Article 2. And we've had many questions about this. We are having a representative come here in 2 weeks, Jennifer Teague. Some people have already submitted questions, and these will be sent on to the main office in Boston so that when she comes, she will have hopefully some answers to these questions. But these will be in your e-update. And if you have other questions, please come to the meeting. The time will be announced. It's 2 weeks from this Sunday. Okay. Now, if you'll join with me in lighting our chalice. May this flame remind us of the values of opening our minds to ideas, the perspective of those unlike ourselves. May it symbolize the bright light that stories bring to lives. And the covenant that we have made with each other, if you'll help me with that. Recognizing the richness of diversity, the beauty and wonder of shared worship, the transforming power of love and service, gather as a intentional community to really seek and drive and celebrate fullness of life, and by our actions increase goodness and justice. Our prelude music this morning is a song about a murder of countless Black Americans. This song was banned on many radio stations in the 1960s. Jennifer, please.
Some beliefs are like walled gardens. They encourage exclusiveness, and the feeling of being especially privileged. Other beliefs are expansive and lead the way into wider and deeper sympathies. Some beliefs are like shadows, clouding children's days with fears of unknown calamities. Other beliefs are like sunshine, blessing children with the warmth of happiness. Some beliefs are divisive, separating the saved from the unsaved, friends from enemies. Other beliefs are bonds in a world community where sincere differences beautify the pattern. Some beliefs are like blinders, shutting off the power to choose one's own direction. Other beliefs are like gateways, opening wide vistas for exploration. Some beliefs weaken a person's selfhood. They blight the growth of resourcefulness. Other beliefs nurture self-confidence and enrich the feeling of personal self-worth. Some beliefs are rigid, like the body of death, impotent in a changing world. Other beliefs are pliable, like the young sapling, ever growing with the upward thrust of life.
This is our song, and we don't have any words for you to look at other than up here. So. Be seated.
After our words of meditation and our time of silence, you'll be invited to come forward if you like and light a candle of joy or concern up front here, or you can do that at the back as well. And remember, you can always write down a joy or concern in our booklets back there, and we'll make sure your thoughts get put into our weekly e-update. Our words are from Martin Luther King. The question is not whether we will be extremists, but what kind of extremists will we be? Will we be extremists for hate or for love? Will we be extremists for the preservation of injustice or for the extension of justice? The question is, can we be great leaders who possess opinions and a will, who have honor, integrity, and who live above the fog in public duty and private thinking? Let us enjoy some silence.
It was founded in 1876 in Philadelphia. They focus on advocacy, policy, professional and leadership development, and equity, diversion, and inclusion. The following is a litany of the ALA's most challenged books of 2022. A challenge meaning an attempt to remove or restrict materials based on a person or group's objection.
It began as an attempt to explain what non-binary and asexual means to a family. Kobabe's Genderqueer has become an instructive and comforting book, celebrated with awards and honors. This guide provides information on gender identity, what it means, and how to think about it for advocates, friends, and humans everywhere. It has been challenged 151 times for LGBTQIA advocacy and sexually explicit content. We'll get the next slide.
Oh, there we go. Number 2, All Boys Aren't Blue. A critical, captivating, merciful mirror for growing up Black and queer today. Through personal essays, a prominent journalist and LGBTQIA activist explores childhood, adolescence, and college years. Readers are invited on their own paths to healing, self-care, and living one's truth. Challenged 86 times for LGBTQIA+ and sexually explicit content. No.
The Bluest Eye. Long considered a classic, Toni Morrison's novel details the life of a young African-American girl growing up in the years following the Great Depression. Morrison is an acclaimed Nobel Prize winner, and his book examines and asks questions about race, class, and gender with characteristic subtlety and grace. It's been challenged 73 times for depiction of sexual abuse and sexually explicit content.
Flamer, a graphic novel telling the story of life as an LGBTQI+ person. A difficult story done with humor, compassion, and love. Challenged 62 times for LGBTQIA+ and sexually explicit content.
And in a tie for 5th place, Looking for Alaska. Showing the depths of grief and attachment, Looking for Alaska tells the story of a young man as he comes to terms with the death of his friend. Celebrated for its contribution to young adult literature, it is now considered a modern classic that shows the indelible impact one life can have on another. It's been challenged 55 times for sexually explicit content, smoking, drinking, and profanity.
Also in 5th place, a modern classic in the coming-of-age genre, The Perks of Being a Wallflower, follows Charlie, an introverted high school freshman, as he navigates friendship and trauma. Adapted into a film, the story has been loved by generations of students. It is now a cult favorite that is both heartbreaking and hysterical. Challenged 55 times for depiction of sexual abuse, drug use, profanity, LGBTQIA+, and sexually explicit content.
Number 7, Lawn Boy. A coming-of-age and rags-to-riches story rolled into one with humor and heart. It's been challenged 54 times for LGBTQIA+ advocacy and sexually explicit content.
Number 8, The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian. A teenager named Junior throws a book at a teacher in his reservation school one day and gets suspended. He'd snapped when the teacher handed him a book with his mother's name written inside. Why couldn't their dirt poor school ever have new books? This is the story of a budding cartoonist growing up on a Spokane Indian reservation. He leaves the school on the reservation and attends an all-white high school where the only other Indian in the school is the mascot. Challenged 52 times for profanity and sexually explicit content.
Number 9, Out of Darkness. This award-winning historical novel about an interracial love story set against the racism of 1930s Texas. It's a heartrending and powerful story. The author candidly describes the heady, emotional roller coaster of falling in love with the added heartache of knowing it's not only socially forbidden, but illegal. The setting is 1937's Texas, when segregation was the law. It's been challenged 50 times for depictions of abuse and claims that it is sexually explicit.
And these last 4 are tied for 10th place. A Court of Mist and Fury, a fantasy romance, and a large portion of the book deals in trauma and trauma healing. The author writes her books with a purpose that requires additional readings to see that it is not just a fast-paced romantic adventure. Challenged 48 times for sexually explicit content.
Crank. When Christina goes to visit her biological father, she creates a new identity for herself, calling herself Bree. She tries things like methamphetamines, which she smokes for the first time with her father and a new boyfriend. Once back home, she can't break free of Bree, or the drug she calls the monster. Then she begins her struggle for her mind and her life. Challenged 48 times for a depiction of drug use and sexually explicit content.
Me and Earl and the Dying Girl, a very funny book about death, but also honest and heartbreaking. It has been called an instant classic, challenged 48 times for profanity and sexually explicit content.
And the last book tied for 10th place. This book is gay. This exuberant guide to LGBT life takes the stance that being L or G or B or T is natural and fun. Speaking with candor, humor, and enthusiasm, the author addresses topics from coming out to sexually transmitted infections to online sex apps. It's been challenged 48 times for LGBTQIA behavior and advocacy, and for presumed sexually explicit content, and for providing sex education.
Something's happening here, and what it is ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a gun over there, telling me I have got to beware. Things time we stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look at what's going down. What's going down? What a field day for the heat. There's 1,000 people in the streets, singing songs and carrying signs. Hostess saying, hooray for ours. I think it's time we stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look at what's going down. What's going down? Satellites are being drawn. Nobody's right if everybody's wrong. Young people speaking their minds, getting so much resistance far behind. I think it's time we stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look at what's going down. Oh yeah, what's going down? Oh. Paranoia strikes deep into your life. It will creep. It starts by always being afraid. Step out of line and the man will come and take you away. Think it's time we stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look at what's going down. Stop, hey, what's that sound? Everybody look at what's going down. Stop, children, what's that sound? Everybody look at what's going down. Stop, hey, what's that sound? Everybody look at what's going down.
Thank you, Jeremy. When Boston journalist Joanna Weiss was in 5th grade, one of her classmates brought a hardcover edition of Grimm's fairy tales to school. And at recess, Joanna and a few of her friends followed that girl down a hill out of the sight of the adults. Joanna wondered what horribly wonderful words were there that they weren't supposed to see. As the girl dramatically opened the book, Joanna saw that Grimm's fairy tales had been carved out just enough to fit a paperback copy of Judy Blume's 1975 novel, Forever, inside. Her classmate carefully pulled out the book and turned directly to the dog-eared pages about teenage sex that she knew her friends would want to read. The secret book was passed from girl to girl over recess, each one feeling both excited and a little frightened. Now, it's quite possible that Blume's books were probably banned in Weiss's local library. When I was a preteen, I must have lucked out. Maybe the books were too new, or perhaps I stumbled upon copies. Heck, knowing my dad, he may have bought the books for me, but I read every Judy Blume book in the 70s that were published. I loved Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, and so did my friends. It was a magical coming-of-age story about a 12-year-old girl negotiating relationships, a changing body, sex, and religion. But what I remember most is when my girlfriends and I would laugh hysterically, repeating the lines, I must increase my bust. It was a long time ago, I know. I'm sure that we also secretly wished, as the protagonist Margaret did when she says, "Have you thought about it, God? About my growing, I mean. I've got a bra now. It would be nice if I had something to put in it." Well, I mean, you can see why the book is scandalous then and now, right? When Bloom's Are You There, God was first published in 1970, it was banned only in a handful of places around the country, ostensibly due to one thing: passages about menstruation. Ironically, one school that took it off the shelves was the very elementary school that Judy Bloom's own children attended. Now, Bloom didn't think much about that until the harassment began. One particular phone call puzzled her. The caller asked Bloom if she was the author of that book. Bloom said yes, and then the woman screamed, "Communist!" and hung up. What did communism have to do with talking to God and menstruation? Bloom wondered. While the 70s were relatively tame for Bloom, as the culture wars of the 80s began to ramp up, book banning began a whole new life. Today, the number of books being banned is at the highest it's ever been. And Bloom has the honor of being one of America's most banned authors. This lovely 85-year-old woman has become public enemy #1 for trying to ease kids through the confusing adolescent years with humor and honest conversation. Never fear, though, if kids can't get a hold of the books. Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret is now a motion picture, and it's streaming on many platforms. As you heard from our reading this morning, other prominent authors are widely challenged or banned in America as well. People like Toni Morrison and New York Times best-selling authors like Jay Asher and Ellen Hopkins have all had multiple titles banned. But more obscure authors are targeted as well. Now, to clarify the language for a moment, again, a challenge means that a group is attempting to remove or to restrict a book. It's the first step in banning, which means to actually have it removed from shelves. Challenged books have content that has been found to be offensive to a particular group. Much of the time, that group has the power or has the backing of people who have the power to get a book removed. To be clear, if a book is banned, it doesn't mean that you can't own the book or have that book in your possession, in your house. Fortunately, we are far from the days when you had to sew a book into your sleeve of your cloak or risk being called a heretic. At least we hope so. A banned book is pulled from shelves of a library or removed from a classroom. That's what it means. This is so that impressionable youth can't get a hold of some awful book that will turn a daughter into a lesbian right before her parents at the dinner table. Okay, that's an exaggeration, I know. Or is it? A common belief is that if children don't read about certain subjects, they won't know about them. And if they don't know about them, they can't happen. One example is the irrational idea among some censors that if young people read about LGBTQ+ people, they can be influenced or groomed to become one. This is why librarians that refuse to take banned books off shelves are sometimes called groomers. Now, as very rational, religious Unitarian Universalists, we know that number one, people are born LGBTQ. So reading about or even hanging out with other people does not make someone gay. Go figure. But since research shows that most of the censorship is fueled by a blend of hard-right politics and Christian nationalism, censors tend to mask their apprehension as moral outrage. Number two, we know that if kids don't get information from books, they're going to get it somewhere else. And it may not be based in fact. Bloom suggests that rather than keeping kids from questionable content, we ought to let them read what they want and then have responsible and knowledgeable adults talk with them about what they read. And number three, real life instances prove that certain books have been lifesavers for isolated kids who may feel that there is no one in the world that understands them. One example relates to the book, It's Perfectly Normal. When author Roby Harris began writing it, she knew it was going to be controversial. Many people even advised her not to write it because it would end her career. But she did, because she felt, quote, it's what every child has the right to know. It's now in its 4th edition and has sold over 1 million copies. With each edition, Harris consulted pediatricians, biologists, and even lawyers to make sure all of the information was accurate and up to date. You may recognize it because Unitarian Universalists and UCC congregations have used this book for years in their sexuality education courses. Due to its depiction of cartoon, naked bodies, genitalia, and sections on heterosexual and homosexual lovemaking, the ALA reports that It's Perfectly Normal has been one of the most frequently challenged books over the last 20 years. Rather than parents or small groups bringing challenges about this book, though, large politically based organizations have been behind at least half of all the challenges about this book, according to PEN America, a nonprofit working for protection of free expression. When people at Book Riot, the largest independent editorial book site in North America, heard about all these bans and the impact that the book had made on one particular little girl in real life, they took action. They created an 8-page cartoon story called Book Bans. The cartoon book tells the true story of a 10-year-old girl in Delaware who visited her local library with her mother. This is the first page. After the girl reads the section on sexual abuse of the book, the girl goes to her mother and points to the area of the book that says, "This is me." It says, later that day, the little girl showed her mom the chapter on sexual abuse and said, "This is me." In real life, that little girl told her mother that her father had been sexually abusing her. So this story demonstrates how a book can give words to a child that didn't know how to communicate something terrible was happening to her. It was life-changing for that little girl. This cartoon was posted on social media, and it just so happens that actress Viola Davis saw it. She posted it on her Instagram account, and because she has a huge following, the cartoon and support for the book itself suddenly exploded. Not only was there tremendous outpouring of support, but important discussions are now occurring about sexual health books that are being challenged across America. Davis wrote on her post, "This is why books are important to kids." Despite campaigns like that one, book banning is increasing at breakneck speed everywhere. As our cultural divide has widened, subjects once taboo, like race and sex and even religion, make some people so frightened that censorship feels like the best answer. People without any experience with different races, ethnicities, cultures, or gender or sexual orientation just plain feel scared, or they've been raised to distrust or be against anybody who is different from themselves. Diversity becomes a four-letter word. They feel threatened and fearful of the unfamiliar. And then the fear becomes irrational. And that fear is an extremely powerful emotion, and unfortunately, it is contagious. So, groups of people or organizations simply declare that they find material offensive, and immediately a book is put on the chopping block. Churches can use it to keep moral order and control of their members. Parents use it to control their kids. Politicians use it to get elected. And it seems that these days, a whole lot offends at least some group. And it isn't difficult to write something offensive. Books that question authority, have any hint of sex, or even paganism, or any number of isms you can think of, can make a book vulnerable to a ban. If you're wondering, over 90% of bans are due to sexual content, 60% due to offensive language. 50% are reported to be unsuitable for an intended age group, and about 1/4 of all books banned are due to their religious viewpoint or LGBTQ+ content. The rest are banned for varying degrees of violence, racism, drugs, anti-family, or political views. But overall, the generic party line that is used at school board meetings, city councils, and public hearings about banned books is that we need to take these books off the shelves because the material in them contains ideas that are harmful to the growth of children. But lest you think, as I did before I did this research, that complaints come primarily from outraged parents who are rummaging around in their kids' backpack and find a dreaded copy of, The Joy of Sex. You had one. Okay, I'm showing my age, but you know what I mean. That's not the case. Banning doesn't usually start from one parent who's upset. The complaints mostly come from statewide or national advocacy groups that organize smaller community groups to push their agendas. School boards, city councils, and local organizations are also behind the bans. In addition, conservative groups will support candidates who they think will support the cause. It is no mere coincidence that the same titles are being banned in different states. A national agenda is very specifically followed. Power and money. That's what's behind the efforts. This is particularly evident when individual teachers or public library employees have fought bans. They lose their jobs because they do not have the resources to fight massive organizations. Not to mention the tactics used against librarians. Librarians that refuse to take books off shelves have been labeled groomers and even pedophiles. It goes on social media and it leads to threats and harassment. For some, it's become unbearable, and sometimes they even move from their communities. Organizations that monitor extremist groups report that the ultimate goal is not only to spread the ideology, but to take over local decision-making bodies, and even in some cases, strip libraries of legal protections and, in a few cases, defund libraries altogether. Although we have had banned book weeks for 41 years, never has it seemed so crucial. The numbers say it all. Texas banned 800 books in over 22 school districts last year. If you're wondering, Florida is second with 566, Pennsylvania third with 457, Tennessee's also in the hundreds, and then it drops down to Oklahoma with 43, and guess what? Michigan is in number 5th place with 41 banned books last year. Overall, book challenges doubled from 2021 to 2022 across the country. Now, these are interesting numbers and maybe a little scary. But what makes it even more alarming is that of all of those books that were challenged, 90% of them were part of a group of titles that are being challenged all at one time. That means there's a slate. As many as 100 books are brought forward at once in censorship efforts. So it's obvious to me that book banners are not worried about what their own child is reading in particular in one book. They're more interested in making a grand statement about books in general. Book banning has become part of a much bigger agenda that involves religion and politics, race, gender identity, and sexual orientation. These mass challenges only recently began. Around 2021, conservative groups distributed lists of harmful books to their constituents, and they were off and running. Obviously, none of the authors we've mentioned today set out to harm children or get banned. Bloom says it alarms her to see the increasing number of bans recently, but what worries her more is that it may dissuade good authors from writing at all because they fear censorship. She says that what would really harm children is all the books that potentially will go unwritten. It also makes me wonder if some publishers have become hesitant as well. An author may be stopped in their tracks because a publisher fears the subject matter isn't marketable. I experienced this personally when I contacted one of the most liberal publishing houses I know, the Unitarian Universalist Association's own Skinner House Books. With a chapter and outline for a book I inquired about, I was told there wouldn't be an audience for a story of the life of a young transgender man who is currently hiding in his own country of Uganda because it is illegal to be gay there. I was stunned. There was no market for it. We've been fundraising, bribing public officials, consulting with immigration attorneys, working with the UN embassy, and even talking with our congressman to keep him alive until we can sneak him and his family out of the country. Human dignity, survival, social justice issues, LGBTQ. What about this is not appealing to a UU audience? If it is difficult for us to get a publisher, imagine what it must be like for authors who have no connections. Fortunately, Harris did find a publisher for It's Perfectly Normal. And they expected trouble because other books were being banned when it came out. But when Bloom first published, the negative attention was a complete surprise. It never crossed her mind that her work would be controversial. She was simply writing about how young people experience adolescence. When her books did become a target, Bloom says she became an anti-censorship activist. And she now says she's completely committed to what she calls children's intellectual freedom. She says that she doesn't believe that censors are interested in letting children have their own ideas. If they got their way, she says, every library shelf would be empty. She said, if they only would read some of the letters I get, like this one from Elizabeth, age 13, who writes, Dear Judy, I don't know where I stand in the world. I don't know who I am. That's why I read, to find myself. As evidence from this letter, children look for things to help them feel less alone, and that can take the form of a book. When you ban books, you may as well be banning ideas from a child's head. But banning books or ideas does pose a dilemma. Shouldn't parents have the right to decide what kinds of literature their kids can or can't have access to? I think so. But currently, bodies of authority use an all or nothing approach, and books are either for everyone or they can't have any of them. There must be creative ways to allow for both. I think it helps to remember what the renowned progressive thinker Noam Chomsky says about censorship. If we don't believe in freedom of expression for people we despise, we don't believe in it at all. Parents have the right to decide, but we desperately want them to consider our thinking about the books they fear. And how do we do that? One of the first steps is to make sure that parents understand what is actually being banned and how the material is being presented. As I mentioned, sometimes a huge slate of books is presented to be banned all at once. Parents should become familiar with individual books that they are saying they're against. Schools can educate parents about sensitive topics that they might cover and allow parents to opt in or out, and also coach parents on how to talk to their kids about sensitive subjects. Simply banning books and pretending they never existed does a tremendous disservice to children. And lawmakers need to hear more from those of us that want material available, because the voices for banning material is a whole lot louder at the moment. Anti-censorship advocates also need to appear at community meetings and make their voices heard, because the other side certainly is making a lot of noise. Even better, anti-censorship people need to run for positions of authority so that they can start making the decisions that make sense for young people. And this week, as always, we all need to read banned books. The bottom line, friends, is a young person out there this very minute may need to know that there are others in the world just like them. Their life may actually be saved by a book.
Thank you, Reverend Kerr. With faith to face challenge, with love that casts out fear, with hope to trust tomorrow, we accept this day as the gift it is, a reason for rejoicing, and we gladly receive your financial gifts to sustain this congregation. Please leave your donations in the offering baskets at the back of the church as you leave, or online at uuflint.org. Thank you.
Kids are looking for anything to make them feel not alone. Books can do that. People don't ban books. They try to ban ideas.
And let us extinguish our chalice. We extinguish this flame, and not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts till we are together again.